Yeah, they're expecting us.
Yeah, last June, when Frank and I met, I proposed to creating a lecture series for the benefit of the continuing intellectual curiosity of our community, our faculty, and our students. And it's just a matter of lifelong learning, because that's why we're here, and that's why we educate. So I received the green light, and then school started, and I was busy, and with the help of Shauna Proctor, who's our English department chairperson, and Mary Lee Petty, we got this thing rolling, and we're here tonight as an inaugural event for what we hope to be is a continuing, ongoing conversation that stimulates lifelong learning and, again, intellectual curiosity. So I'm going to be quiet before the orchestra plays me off. And Frank is going to lead us in a quick prayer, and then we'll ramp it up.
All right. Thank you, Fred.
You're welcome.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
Amen.
Good and gracious God, we thank you for the many gifts that we have. And tonight as we reflect upon knowledge and creativity on this, the Feast of St. Scholastica, we ask that you continue to bless us and children here with your many gifts, so that each one may use them in furtherance of others, in furtherance of love and of life, and in furtherance of your mission. We ask all this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
The gentleman to my left is Mr. Sal Triviano, who is the chairman of our board, and he is going to moderate our guests, the conversation with our guests, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Mr. Mierbach, and hats off to Mr. Mierbach for pulling this all together. We've been talking about this for a while, and I'm just so glad we can pull this together and have all the folks here attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm not a professional moderator in any way, shape, or form, so your patience with me here this evening, I might learn something about doing this, and I'll take it from there. So, would you like to do the introductions
sure.
also, or do you want? Okay.
Our panelists include our one and only homegrown, if you will, Evan Hughes, our art teacher, who I encourage you to look at his website. Just Evan Hughes. What?
It's MrHughesArt.com.
Pardon?
MrHughesArt.com.
One more time.
Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Hughes.
Art.com.
I scrolled through it today, and there's another, you don't know this yet, Bonnie, my wife Bonnie. There's a piece I want to purchase. So,
The price just went up.
the price just went up. Yeah. And then in the tan jacket, in the sport coat is Dr. Chip Kroneman, who is a nephrologist as well as a published award-winning author of several short stories and articles specific to the world at large, as well as interesting facts from the medical profession. Chip has a book that's being published. It's in print now, isn't it?
It's September of this year coming up.
And the book is titled
Detroit Heroic.
Detroit Heroic, and if it's a novel, and I believe it's focused on the riots.
Well, it starts in '67, the first day of the Detroit uprising, and ends in '68 when the Detroit Tigers win the World Series.
There it is.
It's kind of the beginning of the rebirth of our area, basically. So.
Rounding out the trifecta of creatives is Mr. Ziggy Klett. Ziggy has performed well over 1,000 stand-up comic performances, obviously all self-written, created by himself. He also has a one-man show called 47 Chairs, which I was fortunate enough to see the preview 2022?
I think so.
And he performs that all over the Midwest, and then he's 3 years now in New York, Off-Broadway, with his show. It's a very moving, touching, personal review, if you will, of his life. Ziggy's a cancer survivor, has met his wife. I can't give away too much of it, can I?
Well, that's about 74 minutes out of 75 right there. So, don't even bother.
Yeah, I mean, if I don't, yeah, I hear the music playing, I'm going to sit down.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you. We welcome you. We appreciate your time, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Welcome, thank you. So let's start off by talking about this word creativity. And that's the kind of the cornerstone of this first talk that Mr. Mierbach has put forth. And you know, it sounds like a great idea. We want people to be creative. That sounds like a neat thing. And it's kind of like, you know, getting in your 10,000 steps and taking your vitamins. But how do you cultivate that, and why do we think that's important? So let's probably start with why do we think that this is an important topic to talk about? Anyone can chime in. There's no pressure.
I think that there's something that comes into you and you just want to express the world as you see it. There's so many reasons that you want to be creative. One is just to help yourself. When you see the world as it is, and you may have some anxieties about what you're seeing, and it's so much nicer if you can put it on paper. And I just think of Ernest Hemingway, who said, "I see a psychiatrist every day, Dr. Smith and Dr. Corona." And those are typewriters for you young people.
By the way.
And it's a good way to come in touch with some of your feelings of things that you see. And also to be able to create something out of, on a blank sheet of paper. You don't know how you do it, all of a sudden you do it. It's like, I can't draw anything, but you see these people who can draw things and you go, where did that come from? And then to write a story, you see a blank sheet of paper, the next thing you know, there's something there. Now, how does that get there? I don't know. But just write and write and write, and if it's bad, make sure you have a good editor.
Go ahead. Sure. For creativity, as far as using your brain and what you do with it, I think if you are using creativity, being creativity, you're working in the direction of what you're really capable of, really using your full mind's power. And on the same note as what Chip was talking about here is the sincerity involved. I think you can be silly and insincere with what you do with creativity, but I think you really have to think about it and put some real sincere thought into it, and then you're really kind of putting what you're really thinking about honestly, tangibly on paper and writing, sculpting physically, or designing in 2D fashion, or performing.
Do you have any further comments on that, Ziggy?
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear Chip and Evan. I think it started with my DNA. I came from an insane group of Dublin Irish Catholics and German Jews. And I grew up in central Wisconsin, and my youth was spent shoveling and reading. And we were forced to be creative. And my brother is a very talented cartoonist, so I was just immersed in it from the time I was a zygote till today. And I think you couple that with prolific reading, and I also believe, I believe that some are touched with a creative spark. Like Chip said, when you're looking at the blank slate and an hour later you got a story, where does it come from? I think it comes from our Heavenly Father, from our Creator. That's my belief.
What were you
Well,
showing?
thank you very much, everybody, and have a
Okay. No. You could have been a farm, I don't know.
Evan, you talked about the process and just kind of maybe a little bit on the inspiration side, and you used the word sincerity. And I wanted to explore that a little bit more, kind of what prompted you to say that. And I kind of maybe at an angle I'd like to maybe bounce it off you, but go ahead.
In my classes, anyone who's taken my classes, the big thing I want to see from student is their effort. And sometimes that's the time spent on things. And a lot of times I'll talk with a student and say, like, is this really what you want to do with this? And sometimes they say, yeah, and they keep working on it. Sometimes they'll even admit, no, I can spend more time thinking about it. And then the more I see them work on it, maybe scratch off or cross out a drawing and then come back to it with like a light bulb moment, now I know they're really thinking, they're being very serious about it. In my experience with art, and I've dabbled with music, not so much writing, I feel like the best things I've made, or the things that people connect with, are the things that they have that same sincerity or same idea. So I was kind of saying it before and rambling, like sometimes I think we can do stuff that's silly or less than sincere with visual arts, but I feel like the more you really think and make considerations with what you're making, you're really, again, getting in touch with your potential and I don't know where I'm going with this, but trying to be.
You're getting there.
I feel like you get the best product maybe when you're more sincere about it, and then you're getting better in touch with yourself and your thought process and your potential.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
The sincerity, like I just read something today where if you become a writer, you're no longer a member of polite society. If you tell it, I mean, no one is more hated than he who tells the truth. And when you're writing, yeah, you get pretty close to some pretty sensitive topics. And right now I still have to keep my day job, so I got to temper. I can't tell it all.
Interesting. I was thinking about when you said, maybe the process of your creativity and sweating it through and writing and getting the feedback of how your feelings are. Do you feel that there's some sort of catharsis of some sort? It's kind of like a therapy. Is that a common thing for other folks here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll run with that, Ziggy.
Well, I think, talking about sincerity, the best shows I've ever seen for a stand-up or an actor are when it gets really raw and really authentic and really close to the bone. And I think there is a transition starting out from creating a story and the arc of the story, the beginning, the middle, the end, and that's great. But I think when you get to the really highest levels of it, it's so personal, it's so sincere, it's so authentic that the entire audience is captivated. This is the vision. And they're saying, yep, I understand what's written here. I understand what this actor is doing. It doesn't even seem like he's performing. It feels like he's just telling his truth. That's, to me, the highest art form.
What comedians do you like? I mean, they're out there. I mean, some of them are just, like this guy Gutfield. Okay, some of the stuff's okay, but a lot of it's just sophomore nothing,
Yeah. Well, I was always a huge fan of George Carlin because he was such an incredible wordsmith, and he was very edgy, and he was an incredible wordsmith. And I think that, for me, that was probably the highest form.
Yeah, it seemed Carlin kind of transcended being a comedian. I mean, he was more people think he's more like a philosopher, right? And it's kind of transcended comedy.
Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah. It was not premise, punchline, punchline, punchline. No. It was a whole different art form.
Interesting.
The hippy-tippy weatherman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was AM Carlin.
Was that?
Yeah, and then he went to FM Carlin.
Mike's not picking that up, Maybe you shouldn't. I'm sorry.
It's all good. Just maybe one more thing on this point of sincerity, and it's trying to maybe tie it into some of what our students are seeing in their modern life of the digital world. And I think you touched on a little bit about your younger years when you were growing up, and you kind of had to do these kinds of things. But today, and I'm not just kind of decrying it because, maybe someone of an older generation, but, now it's the culture, as it were, maybe of content creation, and it's kind of maybe trying to package and monetize and trying to put creativity in some sort of marketable package. I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, just wanted to get your thoughts and feedback about that and, the conflict or the tension between those.
Right.
Go ahead.
Can I chime in?
Absolutely.
The greatest large language model in this room tonight is your brain. And no large language model can think what your next thought is going to be because it doesn't have your experience of your life. The things that have touched you, the things that have influenced you, the things that are propelling you. And that's why my money is on the human brain, not the large language model. And if I can editorialize for a minute, I think these cell phones should be banned until you're 18 years old because I'm convinced that it's changing the brains of our youth. And that's just my feeling on it. And I'd much rather hear what Jocelyn has to say than what a large language model has to say. But that's just me. I feel so much better. Thank you.
Does that question kind of ask, like, what does current social media or technology, what constraint, or how does that frame the products, content that we'd all make? Is that?
Just, and not to editorialize either necessarily, but just kind of, as I see it, as I'll call myself a casual observer, the point is the production.
Right, yeah.
The point is how many times will things get clicked, how many times will things be viewed, and how can I turn this thing into money? And not, again, to necessarily make a judgment or a value assessment of that, but if that happens for somebody's creative output, hopefully that's a byproduct and not the point of it. And I'm just kind of trend-wise, I kind of see that's the point and the opposite of maybe what it should be. Now, again, that's just my perspective. I just want to know what your guys' perspective on that is.
I think it connects on the previous topic 100%. Among other things, I think it removes the sincerity of what
Okay.
we're trying to do, because then you're pandering to trying to sell it, trying to fit into a square that you scroll through or something like that. So I think I agree with what Ziggy.
Okay. And then maybe further to what Ziggy was saying about, today, creation, it's like at a whole different level, right? It's not, it's a lot of the manual things to some extent have been removed from the process. And we're talking about maybe removing the human brain from the process to some extent. Mm-hmm. But, when maybe in our generation, it was more manual processes. Now it's just like when Mickey gets in front of in Fantasia and he just winds his wand and this whole big symphony starts cranking out, right? It's not grinding character after character on the Smith Corona typewriter, right? And do you think that impacts the things that are being created or the process?
How do I write, I feel good about what I'm writing. I don't think a robot has that much feeling in him unless they get real advanced. I mean, I don't see. I mean, I know there's some. You can put like ChatGPT and they can come up with some pretty good lines and so forth. But there's no. I have no personal satisfaction. When I write, I want to feel like, oh, I did this, and boy, I really like this, or man, I need a better editor. But I think that's what's missing. You don't have the. There is a role for humanity still.
Chip, I'm sure in your writing, not speaking for you, but I'll bet there have been times in your creative process frequently where you agonize over one word. And when you find that right word, it's got to be such a great feeling because you've connected with something inside yourself and you're going to connect with something inside the audience as well.
Yeah, and as you get, I'm a work in progress. As you get more experience with it, you find the importance of one word as opposed to,
right.
Yeah. So it was at the end of either For Whom the Bell Tolls or he wrote it 38 times, Hemingway, until he got it just right. So.
that's, yeah, and at least in my travels, that's something I was interested in exploring with you guys about, because I work with and see a lot of students and how they're influenced by the technology, and I appreciate your feedback on that. Kind of maybe to switch gears a little bit here. So how do you, when you guys go about process of whatever creating you're doing, writing, you know, things in the visual realm, do you guys have a certain process that you go through? So maybe certain rituals or certain techniques or times of day or certain moods or anything kind of can encapsulate that for us and share that with the folks? Any?
I better write early in the morning before my brain gets all, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, where there's no noise, and so I like, you know, like about 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock to 7:30 is a nice quiet time to write. So.
Okay.
My AP art teacher from high school told us whenever we have any idea, write it down.
Yeah.
So I usually have my sketchbook on me, which is a lot of my ideas. My notes section on my phone is kind of one of my new areas for that. Like kind of whenever it strikes, but I don't know if it's me getting older in my 40s, but I think past like 9 p.m. I just want to go to bed. I don't really create a lot in the evenings anymore, so midday early is really kind of the best time.
Okay.
I start early. You know, this morning I rehearsed it, starting at about 6:30. I did 42 minutes of my show. But if you go back to the genesis of it, I try and find one true statement, which of course Hemingway said, write one true thing. That's my premise. The doctor's voice was barely audible, but she gave it to me straight. That's the start of a whole story. And then I try and think of the arc of the story, and I try and have something impactful to say or that is will resonate. In terms of technique, I don't like to go more than, say, 30 seconds in the show without saying something that is going to be captivating. So early morning, like the ice for me. And 9 o'clock at night, I'm done.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
But you get your cues from life. I mean, from your experiences. I mean, because these people who can write stuff out of, real. I mean, I'm fortunate that the, my sphere is pretty dramatic. With the medicine and all that. So it's easy to find things to write about. But the more mundane parts of life, and people can make good stories out of it. Those are, I think, your real writers.
When you're in the course of your day, are there times where you hear an awkward remark or an observation and you go,
"Oh yeah,
that's it.
I got it."
Right.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
How about I've heard some great zingers.
I'll bet.
And they made a story.
And do you guys use Apple phones? The notes on my Apple phone have completely changed everything, because now I can just pull it out and say,
How do you use an Apple phone? How do you make a note? I barely can.
don't ask me, I just have Fred come with me.
There you go.
Fred.
Apple Notes have been a game changer for me.
I have one of my short stories here. It's kind of sad stories. I took care of this young lady, and she was stuck in the hospital, and they could not get her out of the hospital. She had type 1 diabetes, and she develops lupus, and then she develops kidney failure, and then we're trying to get her a transplant, and we find a malignancy. So she can't have anything. So she's in the hospital, and she's on the kidney machine, and they can't place her. So a person went up to her and said, "Since you're going to die anyway, why don't you stop dialysis?" And it's probably the cruelest thing I've ever heard anybody say to another human being, especially, So that, spawned a whole short piece. And a lot of things happened subsequent to that. But you'll hear things that really kind of shake you. And then once you write about it, okay, I don't feel any better about it, but at least I got it out.
Right.
Yeah, and for Chip and Ziggy, you guys have particularly the unique life experiences that can inform what you're doing, right? Do you guys kind of tend to lean into that a lot, or you kind of not lean into it to maybe get inspiration from other things? Or I saw the documentary about Billy Joel recently,
Oh, yeah.
and it just seemed.
What's that about?
My summary was basically every single song he wrote was literally something that happened in his life, almost verbatim. And I'm just, and is that easy trove to cull from? Do you guys think, and do you guys lean into that, or are you kind of careful of that? Just maybe give share some insight on that.
I got to be careful to hide the identities, because
Sure.
you got the feds coming on you with a HIPAA violation and all that. But the thing is, not only do you practice medicine, but I get people who I've never thought I have. You know, professional fighters in my practice. I had the biggest cocaine dealer in the city in my practice. Nice guy too, by the way. People who you would never encounter. You want to live a day-to-day. I wanted to be like Marcus Welby and everybody's nice, but you meet guys that have been in prison for 17 years, and a story came out of that. But it's fun to practice medicine, but the real thing is getting to know the people underneath it. I had a homicide detective in the hospital now. I'm getting a lot of stories from him. So.
Yeah, I learned to do stand-up comedy in bars in Ohio. So many nights these were in small towns, and it was an unintended consequence thing when they banned smoking in bars in Ohio. All of these bars out in these rural places had to do something to get people to come in. So comedy was cheap. Most of the time we didn't even have a mic or a stage. Well, you can imagine you go into a town like Delphus, Ohio, or Wapakoneta, and I saw a hard scrabble crowd, and I connected with that. It's rough out there for a lot of people, and that helped me dive into authentic stuff. But to answer your question about the personal part of it, I think if it's really going to be impactful, it's got to be deeply personal, because audiences are so attuned to when it gets fake versus when it gets real. And when it gets real, you can palpably sense, okay, we're in a good space here right now, because this is going to be real. So personal is it for me.
Okay, and especially in a world where we're struggling to figure out what we see, if it's real or not. It seems to be more of a challenge in that regard.
Yeah, is that AI, or is that when you see the elephant saving the baby? Wait a minute. Yeah.
By the way, right, Chip, along those lines, never click on lions fighting on Instagram.
Okay.
Because all you're going to get is lions doing everything from crocheting to hang gliding to reading poetry. It'll be all lions. That's my tip.
The machines are doing that thinking for you.
Right.
Algorithm life.
Yes. Go ahead.
The concept of what's personal to you is a huge theme in all my classes. The students who do AP portfolios in my class, they spend a whole year making a portfolio for college, and I tell them to base it off their subjectivity. I have them write down the roles they've elected in life and the ones they are born into, and pull from that, because that's the best content you can pull from, and it's plagiarism free. It's your story. So I pretty much have students make a portfolio based on their experiences explicitly.
Okay.
And the deeper they go into it, the more they find that it's not a limited story. Even at the age of 15, 16, 17, 18, they have so much to pull from just from their life.
Okay. That's great that they're getting that way to think about their own stories and not necessarily in a kind of a short time frame of their life. That's
they don't want to. They want to pull from Instagram or something else. But the more they look into their life and think more about themselves, the more they're like, oh, I'm seeing the connection between the sincerity of me making this. It's real. It's not phony. And then I connect with them, and most people do in conversation, because we can relate to what we can see in their art.
Write about what you know,
Yeah.
rather than, oh,
A lot of painting professors in college will tell you paint what you know.
Okay. I just kind of want to maybe take a different tack here on, what else informs your creativity and your processes of creating things is this idea of cross-training in your life and other experiences that inform how you create, maybe a little different angle. Like Evan, you have a really varied background. You did visual art, you've done digital art, you've done what I'll call the maker world, sports, music. That's kind of like all these different aspects help inform your creativity. Can you maybe shed some light on that a little bit and how those different aspects have helped you?
Sure. If you do sports, you have to do conditioning. So in visual arts, there's the practice, there's the getting the skills, also building creativity. So that's like in sports, you have to do conditioning. You also have to know how to play the game. And I always tell my students who are doing the same thing. And so many students at the high school level play sports, so they know that analogy. They don't go right into the game plan for the football game. They have to do a couple weeks of conditioning before they put the pads on and everything. And with music, it's kind of similar. There's the technique, and then how you use the technique. So there's overlap with all of those. And at the high school level, it's great to make those analogies because some students in the art room will go, well, I don't know how I have more experience with sports or music. So it's actually rely heavily on the interdisciplinary connections there.
Okay. Chip, did you have anything on
it's
that
like,
front?
I do music, and
Okay.
it's kind of like.
A certain instrument or?
Well, guitar.
Okay.
You know. And there's a harmony, when you put a song together, everything kind of fits. And then I take it back, so wait a minute, my story's not really harmonious. Things are not just rolling the way I want. So there's a little bit of, I think, crossover to the rhythm of the story,
Okay.
and it can be, musical. Poetry, was
Rhythmic,
musical
yep.
and rhythmic. Now I have written 3 poems, and one is in my next short story collection called The 6 Foot Shuffle, and it's about how we had to keep 6 feet away from everybody during the COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a little amusing, kind of a bluesy thing called The 6 Foot Shuffle. It ends with it, if it wasn't for the nurses, we'd all be riding hearses. Because they did all the work.
Yeah, they did all the work.
So,
And that your music kind of informed
yeah,
the rhythm of that.
I wish I was
Okay.
a better player, but, I've enjoyed, especially like the blues, kind of tells a story, and it's
Okay.
repetitive, and I don't know, there is a rhythm there, and so that has influenced me a little bit. In fact, a lot. So
Interesting.
that notes off, when you're writing.
So that's maybe takes us in another kind of direction here about when you guys are doing work and you're trying to assess, is this my best work, so to speak, or is this what I intended to do? How do you guys kind of fight against, getting down on yourselves or feeling that it's not good enough, and maybe you feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, and you need to be resilient in order to kind of maybe work to the point that you want to work toward. And I think in your bio, Ziggy, you talked about there's like an art and science to the comedy, and you can kind of tell the reactions, and if they are in some certain cycle on some certain frequency, then you're hitting it. If you're not, then you kind of are off. And what if you're not hitting it? What if you're not feeling it? What do you guys do in those cases? Just curious to know.
Like in terms of creating content, writing stories and jokes and so forth, I'm always thinking reduce.
Kill your babies.
And everything I write, I say, okay, can I take 2 words and turn it into 1? Can I take 4 words and turn it into 2? Because getting back to my model or my aspiration is that I want to pack a lot into 1 minute, so that I never want the audience saying, oh, I wish this guy would say something interesting. No. I want to write so voluminously that as I reduce, I get to the real emis. And just getting back to what you were asking about a minute ago, about the cross training, I saw Willie Mays play baseball one time. It was a long, long time ago. And my dad took me to Wrigley Field in Chicago from central Wisconsin. I didn't even know who Willie Mays was. Willie Mays was the first 5-tool Major League Baseball player. He was the first player who could hit with power, throw, play defense, and run. And that really resonated with me. And my aspiration is to be a 5-tool performer. I'll never get there. But when you see it live, that was a long time ago, and it still has an impact on my life.
That's very interesting. I wouldn't have connected that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when you're looking at excellence.
Oh my gosh.
And the thing about it is when I go to the DIA,
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing excellence frozen in time.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize, again, I will never be that good of an artist.
Oh, can I chime in one thing there? There was I'm giving away, my age and my era. Joe DiMaggio was a great New York Yankee star, and it was late in the season. The Yankees had already qualified for the World Series. It was basically a meaningless game, and he went to make a diving catch in Yankee Stadium. Could have hurt himself badly, and he came in, and one of the reporters. There were about 32 daily newspapers in New York at that time, Fred. One of the reporters said, "It was a meaningless game, Joe. Why did you dive for that ball? You're already going to be in the World Series. You could have injured yourself." And he looked and he said, "Because there's people in the stadium who've never seen me play." So that standard is so impactful. How can you not reach for that if you're going to be a creator?
So along those lines, what advice then can we turn that into practical things that maybe our students can consider when they're embarking on various creative endeavors, and not to feel that what they produced is maybe not up to par or not up to par with somebody else, and feeling that they're not cut out for this, or they're uncomfortable with what they're doing? What suggestions do you have, Evan?
In my experience, I have made things that I thought were not good that eventually someone told me they like, and I've made things where I was like, this is epic, I think this is great, and then a lot of people have been, and like close friends, and my wife, who's an artist and designer, goes, no, not so great. So I tell students this, a lot of times what we do in my classes for assignments, so it's meeting the criteria for the assignment, but if it's an open-ended thing, I don't have that criticism. What I tell students is what I learned from an artist I'm actually going to show in my digital class tomorrow, Stephanie Suko. She says, and I love this quote, she says, 20% of what I make is really good. I have to get through the 80% that's not good to get there. So I tell students, if you're working enough at this, you're going to make something that you're proud of, that someone else will like too. And again, for a lot of assignments, it's usually meeting criteria, but if it's open-ended, just keep at it, and you're going to find something you're proud of that you feel like you sincerely put your effort into and is speaking sincerely from your heart. So I think it's subjective as far as what people will think of the quality of the work, but I think if you're putting enough into it, you're eventually, I think, without a doubt, going to make something that's good according to you and or other people.
Be able to accept criticism.
Yeah.
Because I get so many rejections. And when I was first getting rejections, it bothered me. It doesn't bother me anymore. Mm-hmm. And it makes you a better, I think a better writer. Yeah. What I learned is that write short pieces and short fiction and send those out so that you get feedback. Don't sit down and say, I'm going to write a novel, because you don't get any feedback. So I started, I think, writing a novel, and the guy said, no, you're not going to learn anything. So he was right. So I've been, that's when I started writing short pieces, and then they did morph into writing the novel. But you need criticism, even brutal criticism. But don't ever have someone who loves you read your stuff, except My wife is probably the toughest critic I have. I won't let her read any of my stuff. But as a rule, you gotta accept criticism, because you become a much, it's like, that's how you become perfect. I mean, not perfect, you know what I mean? It's like DiMaggio.
I think there is a curse. I call it the curse of creativity, where you're never going to be satisfied with what you're doing. I mean, you're always going to look at it and say, well, that line could have been better, that sentence could have been more cute, that tone could have been more subtle. But that creative dissatisfaction is what propels you towards the perfection that we're seeking. So I would say to the students, try not to agonize about that, accept that it's part of the deal.
So they should become comfortable with that as a thing that they have to deal with in order to
Oh,
pursue
yeah.
creative pursuits. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of, maybe putting constraints or not constraints on what you guys create or not create, do you guys ever think about that? Like how to approach something such that, is it a big thing that I want to tackle? Is it I start small and then work out? Or do you just go, I'm just going to throw it against the wall and do whatever? Or do you have a lot of focus in your creativity or your process? Can you share anything about that with the folks here?
I think it depends on if it's a commission, if it's a job, or
Okay.
what the goal or objectives are. If it's a commission thing, you have limits of time, and usually whoever's commissioning you has the design maybe, and you're just making
Okay.
it. But when it's a very open-ended thing, I start off writing down. I write down words. I might write down a lot of words, and then that can turn into imagery. And then I do thumbnail sketches, maybe and this is all what my high school teacher told me to do, so I'm still doing what she told me to do. A lot of drawing, fill up a couple of pages, and then see does this have legs? Is this something that I'm gonna like, that other people will like? And a lot of times I go, no, and go back to the drawing board, or eventually I might share the idea with somebody, or you know what, I've been thinking about this for a while, I have to get it out on canvas or on the computer, whatever. So depends is the ultimate answer to that. But
okay, I can see that.
yeah.
Chip, did you have anything to share on
With
that?
respect to,
Just how do you kind of limit
okay,
what you're trying to do, and or is
Yeah.
it a wide open
I think
green
that
field?
as I get better, I'm gonna narrow my subjects, because
Sure.
the novel that's coming out in September, I really like, and it talks about the year, 67 to 68, which was to me a fascinating year, much more turmoil then than now, which is one of the reasons I wrote it. But there were so many things going on that, I don't know, I hope I covered it adequately, but I just read a novel, an Elmore Leonard, where, and I see what he was doing. He took one character, and that character had one goal, and that was to bring one person to justice, and then everything weaves around that one, one plan. Now with this novel I wrote, there's all, I've got this and I got that, and okay, I hope it, it's been accepted for publication, but I think I might subsequently start simplifying things a little more as you get a little bit better. But then Tolstoy only wrote 2 novels, right? War and Peace, and there's a lot of stuff there, and Anna Karenina. So, but I think that when you see real tight writing, it is narrow.
Okay. Ziggy, is there anything you'd like to add to that? About the scope of it? I know you kind of addressed it before, that you wanted to have a high, maybe, velocity in what you're doing and have it as compact and compressed as possible.
Yeah.
In at least in your storytelling or comedy. Anything else in that realm you'd like to share?
I think if you went through, my volumes of notebooks, you'd find a lot of times I ask myself the question, is there anything here? Whether it's a thought or a feeling or a voice. And what I typically do is I'll try something 2 or 3 times on stage. If it works, I keep it. If it doesn't work, I never throw it away, but I just put it up in the warehouse and say, I'm gonna come back to that. So high volume, reduce, and store it if it doesn't work. Don't throw it away.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know we're doing a lot of references about things that are in different generations than a lot of the students here and others, but I saw a story about Joan Rivers, who was a famous comedian, and it showed that she had a card catalog, and another antiquated notion, and it was stacked full of jokes, and it was like 4 or 5 of these card catalogs in her apartment. It was just like, she said, yeah, I never get rid of anything, and I'm constantly recycling and putting it back in it, oh, that's an idea, and just kind of keep cycling through it. I mean,
Right.
her methods may be antiquated, but I mean, it's the same idea. So I thought it was just kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, she was incredibly talented.
Yes, sir. Okay, so do you want to?
Well, it's up to you.
All right.
Move to any further comment? Or you want
I just have one more.
No, go for it.
Is that okay?
It's
All right.
fine, it's fine.
So we've kind of talked a lot about, your perspective on what you're creating and what you're producing. And you take inspiration from your life and your experiences. How about taking inspiration from other creators? How much are you guys influenced by other creators? And can you share with the folks here maybe who those creators are and why they are important? Yeah?
Yeah, I'm influenced by all sorts of artists and musicians and even athletes, but in high school I learned so much about traditional art. I don't even want to say traditional arts, but I don't know, artists from like the 1800s. And it wasn't until college I learned a lot more about contemporary artists, and there's, use another old reference, someone who illustrated for the Rolling Stone magazine in the 60s and 70s, Ralph Steadman.
Ralph Steadman.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I was introduced to
He was
his...
the author? Was he?
I
illustrator?
think Hunter S. Thompson was the
He was
author,
the author, right?
and
Yeah.
the illustrator was a British guy still alive named Ralph Steadman. And I always have a black pen in my pocket, and I saw he did drawings that were photorealistic, and half of them could also be like kind of scribbly and cartoony. I was like, well, there's no rules, I can do this. So he's one of my biggest inspirations. And a lot of artists like that seem to deviate from rules, kind of do things that your high school art teacher might yell at you about. So those are my big influences.
Okay.
And when you go to MrHughesArt.com, you'll see images of that.
Some homages to Ralph Steadman, yeah.
Chip?
Well, I like the writers that will say things with like 1 or 2 words, and it's pregnant with meaning. How's that for a line? Anyway, so I like Hemingway, but I don't like the way he dealt. There's some things I don't like about him, but I do like the way he was able to condense, emotion in just a few words. I like Elmore Leonard, who was one of our local talents, and he was very good at using a few words to just describe a lot. And then also, I hate to admit, but I like this James Ellroy, who wrote American Tabloid and L.A. Confidential. Just a few sayings or gestures of the character will give you a lot of a feeling and emotion. And I read other people who, are pretty well acclaimed writers, but they go on and on and on about something that, 1 word would be nice. I mean, just leave it there. So, and try to cut out the boring stuff. So,
Ziggy?
I think, there have been so many artists and performers, writers who've inspired me, but I can't really, pick out 1 or 2, but I would say that for the creative journey, we don't have to, but what I've seen is that any reasonable person who is really blessed and cursed with this creative spark, they would any reasonable person would have stopped way back here, because the level of rejection and pain is so acute and so intense. Any reasonable person would say, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. But those who want to dive in on this, just keep going, because your progress is going to be incremental. But when people who didn't hear you sing or didn't see you paint or didn't read your poems for 3 or 4 years, they're going to read and they go, this is really good. You're getting good at this. Don't stop. Don't stop.
That's great advice. Maybe just maybe wrap it up, just if I may.
Go.
Along,
Any Q&A? I'm sorry.
yeah, is that, do we got a few minutes for that?
We have a few
Okay.
minutes, yeah.
Just kind of a compliment to that. We talked about folks that you might be inspired by or things that inspire you guys, but do you ever worry that you might be too influenced by some outside creative things, and that voice, so to speak, might become your voice in what you produce? Is that ever a concern or anything you think about?
Yes.
Yep.
On that very note, 2009 through 2014, I was teaching at a high school in Brooklyn, New York, and me and the other art teachers, we had put together art shows, cafes, bars, galleries, and I did one of the shows. I had, I think, 2 of the 3 pieces looked very Ralph Steadman-esque, and then I didn't realize until the show, I was like, that looks like just his work. And so from that moment, I was like, all right, literally from that moment, it's like my work needs to be specifically my work, or not make too much of a reference to other people, otherwise I might look like a hack, or I'm just taking their work. And so since that time, I try to make sure that I'm doing what I'm teaching to my students, is take more from me and my subjectivity and try to do something that shows reference to other things, and not all in kind of one lane or one style. So
I took this right from James Joyce. My fake wife and I were on a fake honeymoon to Ireland. 1968 was a nightmare from which I hope to awake. It's right out of James Joyce. I just stole it. So I don't know if I'm going to keep it.
But that feels like what you needed for that
Well,
point you were trying to convey?
I've been trying to write this piece, and so I said, wait a minute. So I just stole it. Guy's on his way to Ireland. And I don't know if they'll keep it, but that's like, you know, I mean, you might steal some stuff here and there, but I don't have to be or not to be in it anywhere.
We won't tell anybody. Ziggy, did you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful, especially in comedy and theater. You know, influenced by a Carlin or a Sam Kinison, because you've got to have that break or that gap where you say, okay, that's them, that's not me. And so I think it's a fine line to walk, but yeah, you're gonna have influences, and you're gonna want to imitate that.
I hope that line is so obvious a steal that everyone will know it's a steal. I'm hoping.
We'll give you a pass.
Yeah, I know.
I was can I indulge one quick story?
Absolutely.
I was at the Comedy Store about, I don't know, probably 15 years ago. And Jose Mencia was there, who was a very popular comic. And he started doing a bit, and a guy in the back started yelling, "Joke thief, joke thief."
Ah.
And it descended to a really bad place where one of the rival comics actually went on stage, and he was going to have a fight with Jose Mencia. Guess who the rival comic was? Joe Rogan. Yeah, yeah. So if you're going to do that, you're going to get busted. If you engage in bad behavior for a prolonged period of time, you're going to get busted. And that always kind of played in the back of my head.
Excellent wisdom to end that session for our students. You get busted with Bad behavior.
Bad behavior.
He said it, I didn't.
Just reflecting what was said.
I mean, I didn't pay him for that either.
What, you're not paying me, Freddie?
Brad, do we have time for a question?
Yeah, quick question. Sure, we've got a few minutes for Q&A.
I want to ask these guys a question because I'm fascinated by what you're doing here at Bishop Foley. I want to show you something about some person creative whose name we don't even know. And I'd like to find out what you guys think about this. Sometime back in the 1930s, a couple of boys in the south of France, one of them fell into a pit. And his buddy pulled him out. And that turned out to be these, the caves, famous caves. And here's something from those caves.
The Lasso Caves?
The Lasso Caves. Am I talking about creativity?
Wait, a caveman.
Yeah, this
Oh,
is...
It's one of the oldest cave drawings,
I
right?
just wondered if you guys, what can you say about, you talked about a brain, you talked about somebody writing what he saw, and you also mentioned the concept of danger. You guys are just fascinating. What, I mean, can you comment on that as something creative, or what kind of a mind or a brain did that?
We're not that different from cavemen. I think that's the bottom line. I mean,
Evan, you're probably qualified of the most of us to answer that excellent question.
yeah, that's good.
It's visual literacy. Whoever did that probably took a gamble that maybe this other person who sees it will know what I'm trying to show, and they, I don't know, I'm making this up. Maybe the other person said, oh yeah, no, that's one of those things we just killed, buffalo, whatever that thing
He drew
is.
from what he
Yeah.
knew.
Well,
Did
what
you from what they
happened
knew?
was,
Yeah.
there were two cavemen, and the one guy said, do you know how to write? And the other guy says, no, and he says, but I can draw. And that's what we got.
Well, that's what I think letters and words are. They're pictures in their most irreducible form, right? You got hieroglyphics, and then that gets reduced to symbols, and then those become letters and written language, right? I think.
It's been around longer than artificial intelligence.
Just a bit.
Yeah.
That's good.
Questions?
Great question.
Mr. Pullis?
I'm curious what role might nature play in the creative genius? So many artists throughout history have gone to nature for their inspiration, and there's a certain humbling effect. Ziggy mentioned it from the top, that you believe this comes from God, that this creative ability comes from God. And many people believe that He is the creator of those things that we find in nature. So how might nature aid or assist in this creative effort? You know, whether it's, Walt Whitman or
Yeah.
different artists, whether it's musicians, it's poets, it's those who write, those who draw, they often go to nature, and we live in a very technologically centric and advanced society, and there seems to be part of us that is always being beckoned by nature. How might that play a role?
Can I chime in on that, Jeff, for a second?
Okay.
I love Springsteen, and one of my favorite Springsteen songs is Badlands. And it makes me emotional. There's such a great line in there. He says, I'm going to go out tonight, and I'm going to find out what I got. And relating it to your question about the role that nature might play, there's a primal fear that you feel when you put yourself out there, particularly in a live performance. And that fear, it's a natural fear. Maybe it's the same fear that those guys saw when they drew those cave drawings, like they were afraid of that, and it made an impact. It made such an impact that 6,000 years ago, we're still looking at it. So when I'm performing, and I think all creative people feel this, it's like, okay, you want to be the headliner? You better get out there and say something funny.
Yeah, now.
And you better do it now, because there's a whole audience out there. So that would be my answer to your question is, Is there a natural nature-driven process? Yeah, I'm driven by fear when I do it.
And Herman Melville talks about water. And I just started reading Moby Dick again, and how water influences people throughout generations. You know, leaves me beside the still waters, and then the concept of going to the sea whenever you got too much of modern, well, back then, modern society, when he thought he was going to kill somebody, he went out to the, on the whaling ship. Not as a tourist, but as a whaler, so. You know, the more I listen to, I'm rereading it again, okay, I get it, you know, it's, when I first read Moby Dick, I said, this is terrible. You know, but as I, you know, I can see where he's getting, coming from, so. But the illusion of the water is one that Melville used.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I appreciate you gentlemen more than you know. But I certainly more appreciate the audience even more. Thank you so much for your presence tonight. We appreciate it. We will keep you informed. Excuse me, we will keep you informed what we're doing first semester academic year 26-27. Thank you. Gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Please take a Foley cookie on your way out.